My name is Chris Sherlock. I'm a solution specialist with MOQ Digital, working closely with both Microsoft and VMware on the AVS solution. As Amelia mentioned, I'm joined by Scott Holden and Greg from Microsoft and Greg Settenich from VMware. Greg, why don't you introduce yourself and let us know what you do for VMware and your involvement with AVS?
Thanks, Chris. Yes, Greg Settenich. I lead the VMware Azure solution for VMware across Australia and New Zealand. Been a VMware for about 6.5 years now. And through my time, I've seen some great, I guess, innovation, but definitely, for me, AVS really takes it to the next level, working with, our great partners in Microsoft. And it's just really good to see a really strong and collaborative collaboration with Microsoft, and also, really working with a lot of our joint customers that we have together in the marketplace. But glad to be here and look forward to taking you guys through the presentation today with Scott.
Excellent. Thank you, Greg. And Scott, how about yourself?
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Scott Holden. I'm a technical specialist for Microsoft, focusing on the Azure VMware Solution. So everything from high-level architecture to low-level engineering nuts and bolts. So really excited to be here to talk about AVS today, as well as hopefully interacting with everyone here further down the track. Being a technical specialist, I have a deep involvement with engineering directly. So more than happy to answer any questions you may have about the AVS or the Azure VMware Solution today. I'll hand back over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Scott. So today, everybody, we're going to talk about Azure VMware Solution, which we also refer to as AVS. So topics are, what is actually AVS? The benefits that AVS brings to not only current client organizations that Scott and Greg can touch on, but also yourselves, potential client organizations, and how MOQ Digital partners with Microsoft and VMware in this case to bring client organizations to their AVS journeys. So without further ado, let's get started. So what most organizations experience today in the traditional data center space is limited redundancy in several components, right? So examples are cross connects, network, storage. There's a bunch of limitations. They can't scale quickly enough when the need arises, be it due to the regulatory pressures or less critical requirements. Going through procurement and deployment processes takes time. And finally, the one everybody loves, it's about business continuity, right? How do you ensure that your business continuity and disaster recovery are sound and actually work in favor of your organization? Disaster recovery continues to be expensive and oftentimes unreliable when organizations look to recover workloads. So this is, I guess, what most organizations live and breathe today in the traditional data center. So what is AVS? AVS is a first-party service which is delivered by Microsoft and certified by VMware. Simply put, AVS allows you to run VMware workloads natively on Azure. AVS empowers customers to seamlessly extend from multi-cloud or completely migrate your existing on-prem VMware applications to Azure without the cost, effort, or risk of refactoring applications or retooling operations. AVS brings many benefits to client organizations. One of the biggest benefits of adopting AVS is the maintenance of operational consistency for admins as they continue to use the VMware platform they're familiar with. So when you're talking about operational consistency, think about how you don't need to retrain your administrators, your VMware administrators, if you adopt a service like AVS. So that familiarity with environment, the reduced need for retraining, zero need for retraining, while still being able to deliver the same level of operational excellence to your organization. That is something you can keep when you embark on your AVS journey. And access to VMware resources such as vSphere are retained for admin staff. Scott, I'm keen on getting your any additions you'd like to make thus far.
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, AVS is an incredibly powerful platform. We're seeing so many customers take advantage of exactly what you said, that consistent operating model between on-premise and the cloud. And we really can't undersell that. Being able to use the same tools you're familiar with today in the same way you would for an on-premise data center, but having all the hard stuff taken care of by Microsoft behind the scenes. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But it really gives you, to a degree, the fastest path into cloud itself. You're not having to learn a bunch of new technology. You really are just extending your data center with the same tooling, the same technology. And we've seen customers take this to the extreme, where they really do treat AVS like just another VMware data center, utilizing the vRealize suite alongside Azure native services to deliver a modern approach to a VMware data center deployment. So even though we are talking about the cloud and deploying inside of Azure, having that same operating model, that same tooling behind the scenes, and to be perfectly honest, having a direct login to vCenter just makes things so much easier when it comes to simplifying migration, making it so we're changing as little as possible, both technology and operational wise, but more importantly, giving you tooling that you feel comfortable with, that you don't have to skill up from day one, but instead can hit the ground running.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. So moving on here, when adopting AVS, you have the peace of mind of running your reliable VMware infrastructure on the trusted and widely adopted Azure cloud. On the left here, you see your on-premises data center and your VMware solution with its components. When you talk about AVS, like Scott mentioned, it's just another Azure service you can access via the Azure portal, for example. AVS is built on dedicated physical hosts on your private cloud running VMware ESXi. Again, the technology that you're used to, that you're familiar with. Networking is one of the biggest topics when we talk about control. And how do we give you a level of control in AVS like you do on-prem via routers or switches or firewalls, right? There are out of the box capabilities that are built into the platform via NSXT, but you can also take advantage of advanced NSXT capabilities such as networking microsegmentation, for example, to allow you to provide access or to lock down the networking down to the virtual machine level. On the right here, your AVS, you have your AVS solution in the Azure cloud. The public cloud allows you not only to tap onto the VMware solution, but also leverage native cloud capabilities. So when you look at things like your Azure Active Directory, like all of the things that you can take advantage there with modern authentication protocols, with your business to customer, your B2C, your business to business capabilities, your PIM, your privilege identity management, your PAM, your privilege access management, your Azure security, your Sentinels. So there's so much that you can tap onto the Microsoft Azure cloud just by also having your service running on AVS. Scott, any considerations for this one from your perspective?
Yeah, and I think it's a great call out to say that you do have the ability to utilize AVS as just another VMware data center. And there's a lot of power in being able to do that seamless transition and move across. But what AVS really unlocks for you longer term is the full Azure ecosystem. We're seeing a ton of customers take advantage of the first step into AVS, unlocking the rest of the Azure platform from them. Not necessarily day one, but when you're ready. Having the entire ecosystem of IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS sitting right next door means you can begin to adopt the right technologies when you're ready. Some of those solutions may be day one for things like backups and other operational tech, rather than reinventing the wheel and having to redeploy appliances, taking advantage of some of those cloud native services. But what we're seeing over time is as customers begin to grow and build out their AVS environment, they can begin to leverage more and more Azure services just next door. Azure SQL is one of my favorite services to use in this manner. The fact that you can run the rest of your application stack in AVS in the same way you would run it on-prem today, but offload your database to Azure SQL, meaning there's less to worry about from a database perspective, the ability to scale it up and down as you need it, all of a sudden unlocks the best of both worlds. We're not just trying to modernize the database and rip it away from the application. We're keeping everything inside the one data center, simplifying that modernization process. But because AVS is that first step, that first component in the journey to cloud, it really unlocks the power to be able to do it on your own time frame or when you're ready, rather than having to go big bang, modernize everything overnight. The other thing I'll mention is the fact that it has both that public and private connectivity. If you do have an existing Azure landing zone or Azure fundamentals in place, you don't need to once again reinvent the wheel. You can utilize all of that existing private connectivity, virtual network and security landscape that you've invested in with AVS itself. On the flip side, though, you can totally deploy AVS without having done the fundamentals, and in fact use AVS as a driver for those fundamentals in turn. So whether you're at the beginning of your Azure and cloud journey and setting up AVS as one of your first service, or whether AVS is the 1000th service you're turning on inside of your Azure cloud presence, there's a really fantastic opportunity there to take advantage of it either way.
Excellent. It is indeed a great opportunity. It is indeed a great service and easy to consume, and that's great. That's great input, Scott. Thank you. AVS will fall under broader Azure Infrastructure Support Services. So for us at MOQ Digital, for managed services clients, MOQ Digital provides the first line of support and liaise directly with Microsoft when necessary. So if you decide to embark on the AVS journey and you're a managed services client, we can take care of that, so that your first line of support and liaise with Microsoft directly. If Microsoft does need to liaise with VMware, a support case will be escalated within VMware, and MOQ Digital will provide all attendees with a brochure of our managed services capabilities at the end of this session. Again, what Scott mentioned before, and I did as well. First party service, single support channel. We can't undersell that. We see a lot in the market, especially today with the prevalence of multiple vendors. It's that single channel that you have access to, the single channel of support when your organization needs help and assistance. One important part of the move to the cloud is to understand who is responsible for what. So in the cloud infrastructure landscape, there is a clearly defined responsibility matrix as part of the AVS. And as you can see, the solution removes a substantial amount of management overhead from your administrators. Over here, all of the blue sections here are the areas that are abstracted and absorbed by AVS and Azure when you adopt the service. An example here, and obviously there's lots for us to uncover here. We could go one by one, and you would be, if you think about the cost and the cost and the time that it takes for your organization to keep and maintain each of these, it's a lot. One example I like to give is the flexibility and operational control is during host patching, where Microsoft automatically attaches an additional host to your AVS clusters at no cost to preserve your capacity, so you don't have to worry about downtime or runaway costs. Again, easy for you to use, simple to maintain. Scott, any considerations on the shared responsibility matrix?
Yeah, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic diagram to look at from two perspectives. And as you said, we can spend all day digging through this line by line in terms of the different aspects of the solution itself. We can look at this from one perspective, which is control. What can you change? What can you configure inside the environment? And there is a limit to that. We won't let you make changes on an individual host by host level. We won't let you disable physical network cards. So there are some safeguards or safety rails in place in the solution itself. But then from a responsibility perspective, the responsibility for those components are completely abstracted from you. When we look at that individual host level itself, the fact that you don't have to worry about infrastructure, you don't have to worry about the physical node, the provisioning of ESXi itself. If you're scaling in and out, it's really just dragging the slider bar. There's nothing else to it. So it really does simplify the use of a VMware stack and the scalability of a VMware stack itself. The other thing that I'll mention here, and this is something that kind of comes just because it's an Azure service, is you actually inherit the best practice architecture and design from both Microsoft and VMware by default. This solution hasn't been built in isolation. We've worked alongside VMware, and it is VMware Cloud certified and verified, to build a solution that follows best practices from the ground up. The fact that this also lives in a Microsoft data center means you inherit all of the Microsoft data practices and security model by default. So we're actually seeing a ton of customers spin up AVS as kind of a known good state. When it comes delivered and you click the portal and click Create Private Cloud, it's deployed following Microsoft and VMware's best practices right down to the hardware compatibility list, giving you the best possible experience for running VMware on a cloud provider. And that's incredibly important. You don't have to make lower level decisions. They're part of the architecture for you, releasing you from having to manage those components, but allowing you to focus on what's most important to your organization. At the end of the day, it's really about delivering business value and shifting that up the stack, meaning you don't have to think about or even consider physical hardware, just makes it a lot easier. Greg,
Absolutely.
anything to add from your end in terms of what you're seeing from customers around the shared responsibility model?
Yeah, look, I think look, from a day two operations, I'm really seeing customers are seeing a lot of value out of this. Now, as we can see from here, the deployment uptake CX, the life cycling all the way up to, I guess, vSAN itself, and the configuration or the base configuration just to, I guess, NSXT. So really, the big value here is, it's a no-brainer. It's really around day two operations, which is where we're seeing the biggest value for customers.
Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Greg. As you can see here, and Scott alluded to this, but before, it's very simple to manage VMware via the Azure portal. Right? In the screenshot, and I'm hoping it's rendering here okay for you, it illustrates how easy it is for an organization to slide the slider bar and provision the required VMware nodes. Additionally, as the cloud is elastic and flexible, you can add and remove nodes as needed. Think about natural disasters or even the events that took place in France a couple of months ago when a data center in Strasbourg was completely destroyed due to a faulty UPS. We've seen a few of those around. One of the things that you probably, and Scott, you around, and Greg, you see a lot of you've seen a lot of solutions in your careers, but we don't hear a lot of vendors that allow you to use servers and return them, right? So with AVS, you've got the flexibility to use the servers as needed. Again, slider bar to the right, slider bar to the left, and you will only be billed for what you consume. At the bottom here, you see some of the specs. But yeah, so it's really a pay-as-you-go, use as you need, return when needed sort of service. It's very flexible. And when we start talking about business, I mean, how does this can help a business? When you think about business operations and you think about things such as acquisitions, when you think about growth, obviously, or unexpected growth, peaks, or you think about divestitures, this is a place that can get you the resources you need quickly, or this is a place where you can use resources temporarily and return them as needed. So great flexibility here, and easy, and above all, easy to deploy and easy to consume and use. Greg, any additional considerations from yourself on the management, the resource management here?
I think this is, just whilst you've been talking, this is really, really powerful. Yeah. And why I say that is a couple of reasons. So, as Scott and I have been working with with a large, I guess, insurance company who are actually running live on the service today. But what this was what this capability, the ability to be able to just, move a lever to the left. I mean, they started with, 15 nodes, and then as the migration occurred and then the environment settled, they sort of, that swing kit, as you might want to call it, they pulled the environment back to, I think it was like 12 or a dozen nodes, and they just used, a few nodes on demand. And then obviously when the environment settled, the migration was complete, then they committed to the RI. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of customers is, when they do the migration, they'll probably, typically might start on an on-demand basis. Once the environment is settled and they're sort of satisfied, I guess, operationally how it's working, and I guess the density they've got out of the nodes, then they'll reduce and just commit or easily expand the environment. So this is really powerful. And what I like about it is, even though you can mix and match reserved instances and also on demand by by leveraging some of this capability. So really powerful tool.
Absolutely. Scott, anything from your side?
Oh, I think absolutely echoing Greg's sentiment. We're seeing so many customers take advantage of the fact that you don't have to provision everything day one. You can start with 3 nodes, add in nodes as you need them, as the migration progresses. And then once you've hit the steady state, bring the number back down again to find that sweet spot of operational efficiency. Exactly to your point, Chris, I don't know of any other provider that would give you some physical kit and hand over them on demand, but then when you're done with them, hand them straight back again. And we're seeing customers, especially in dev test scenarios, take advantage of that to scale out for the week that they need to duplicate their whole environment. But the second they're done, scale it back down again. So the elasticity that comes from AVS being a cloud service is kind of inherent to that whole cloud journey. We're no longer talking about purchasing servers for 5 or 6 years upfront as a CapEx cost. Let's actually look at not only pay as you go, but pay as you go hour by hour, making choices that are right for the business when you need the resources, rather than having compute sitting around doing nothing at all.
And just in terms of deployment, Scott, approximately about 40 to 45 minutes per node.
Yeah, so this is where it's absolutely fantastic, because these numbers are starting to come down every day. As engineering is working on optimizing both the deployment of the solution and the scale out, I mean, the initial deployment of AVS does take a couple of hours to provision. And when you think about what it's doing behind the scenes, spinning up vCenter traditionally on-prem, we're talking days, if not weeks, to do exactly the same thing. So having it done in a matter of hours is really, really great. But to your point, when we look at adding nodes, that's sitting at around about the half an hour mark, if even, it's actually a little bit shorter than that in reality. So this means that you could add as many nodes as you want in half an hour. I mean, going from 3 nodes to 16 nodes in a single click is incredibly powerful, and having that much compute on demand straight away, but then being able to turn the volume knob back down again when you're done in just the same amount of time is absolutely fantastic.
Look, if you've been in a data center and you've been provisioning servers in your life or in your past life, you're going to find a lot of value in this. I'm comparing your half an hour server provisions, Scott, to what I've done in the past in data centers. This is incredible. But we've gotten to a state where it doesn't really get much better than this.
And that's why he's having a cup of tea as well, Chris. Or a beer, one of the two.
Yeah, well, look, one of the things that Greg alluded to before is the RI, which you're going to touch on here, the reserved instances. But on top of all the technical benefits and some of the business benefits that we touched earlier, right? AVS brings multiple commercial benefits as well, right? One is extended free security updates for Windows and SQL Server 2008 or 2. So I'll ask Scott to elaborate on some of the benefits here in a couple of minutes. Also, the ability to bring your own licenses under the Azure hybrid benefits. And thirdly, as Greg had mentioned before, reserved instances. So this is when you commit to the service for 1 or 3 years, and you can get 30 to 50% off when you commit to the Azure VMware solution. So think about these benefits here. When you start compounding these benefits of AVS, your organization has multiple ways to get the best business outcomes reliably and flexibly with Microsoft Azure VMware Solution here. Scott, I'll let you elaborate a little bit more on the free extended security services or any of the other sections here as you wish.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the extended security updates is a fantastic story, not only for customers that have jumped on the first wave, but actually opening it up to customers that are still running 2008 workloads. It's no surprise 2008 is out of date. And if you are running 2008 workloads without extended security updates, that is a risk that your organization needs to consider. Now, we're seeing some customers that are still running 2008 go out and purchase extended security updates. The issue is now that we're into that second year phase, you're having to go back and buy the whole kit and caboodle just to bring yourself up to date. So it's actually a little bit more than 75% of the license cost to actually de-risk your organization. Where this is fantastic though is because AVS sits on top of Azure, it's an Azure native service, you get free extended security updates for any 2008 Windows Server or SQL that runs on top of Azure. This means just simply by vMotioning from on-prem into Azure, those workloads are now ready to go for extended security updates. Now there is 1 or 2 steps to actually apply it, but the fact that you don't have to pay for the extended security updates, they're included as part of the platform, is a massive seller, not only for de-risking an organization, but we've had a couple of customers where the cost of ESU has nearly offset the cost of AVS itself. So not only are you getting into the cloud onto modern, well-managed infrastructure at a rapid pace, you're also de-risking those legacy workloads. Now, when it comes to those legacy workloads, AVS is a fantastic place to shift them across to de-risk and then consider what happens longer term. Do we upgrade them? Do we retire them? Do we modernize them? It really gives you the ability to make the right decision once again when you're ready, rather than being pressured into doing something yesterday. So it's a fantastic opportunity to de-risk and kind of shift out of the data center at the same time. And we're seeing nearly every single customer that's jumping onto AVS take advantage of these extended security updates, because it is really just amazing value as part of the service itself without even having to lift a finger.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I just, just in addition to Scott there, another great benefit with respect to, I guess, driving down costs when moving to the hyperscalers is the Azure hybrid benefit, right? So this is really around, bringing your own license into Azure AVS, which I think, again, just adds to that business case when thinking about which hyperscaler to move at. So if you look at, all of this as a whole, free updates, bring your own license, and obviously significant discounting on RIs, it's just a really compelling business case for customers.
Absolutely, yeah. Compounded benefits, yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a no-brainer. Thank you both. Just moving on here. So we've got a couple of security slides. That's hot, as it is a hot topic. There's not a single organization in this planet, I guess, that doesn't want to talk about security. So as it is as security is top of mind when an organization is making a decision and who to partner with, right? And AVS inherits Azure's data center security capabilities, such as certified data centers, and these are global certifications as well. There are obviously local ones, but some of the global ones: certified hardware, certified cloud environment, edge security and DDoS protection, identity management. There's so much more to it. We're happy to get you some documentation after this, but there's a lot more that your organization can tap into just by being in Azure. And additionally, you maintain the VMware security layer and have access to private cloud security components, such as your data encryption at rest, your host security that you've always had on-prem, encrypted vMotion traffic and kernel traffic as well as, again, existing capabilities such as your granular role-based access control in the VMware platform. There's lots of built-in security capabilities your organization can tap onto by being in the cloud. Again, this is in the inherited security side of things. This is just a private cloud security firewalls. So you can tap into, I guess, your native Azure firewall, your Azure firewalls, but you can bring your own firewall flavor, Palo Alto's, Fortinets, and whatever, and deploy from your marketplace. But you also have access to to event alerts and audit trail dashboard, pen tests and vulnerability scanning, things like patch management, automated patch management in the cloud, software development life cycles, multi-factor authentication, data erasure best practices following NIST 800 series standards. So just tons here that you can tap into by being in AVS. And when you think of the cost of maintaining these capabilities on premises and speed with which you can bring them to life, AVS is really a no-brainer. When you're speaking about encryption in AVS, encryption at rest uses provider managed keys. AVS manages the encryption keys in a multi-tenant vault, such as KMS type of vault. And your vSAN data services, remain the same and unaffected from encryption. From a security perspective, Greg, I mean, in your conversations with customers, I mean, what are the concerns and what is the feedback that you have gotten so far with AVS?
Look, I think, you know, for me, a lot of the customers we talk to, particularly some customers obviously in government, whether it's state or federal, I think obviously the certification on the platform with some of the in specific, and also I guess the FSI, so obviously compliance around PCI. I think you know, a lot of the other sort of more federal customers we speak to, obviously data at rest and encryption is a big thing for them, but also, you know, knowing that, you know, obviously this being in a Microsoft data center, the layers of security that you actually inherit by being within a Microsoft data center is, you know, probably the three biggest things I see.
Excellent. Anything from your side, Scott?
I think probably the best thing to call out here is the fact that you are getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the inherited security that VMware brings to the platform via their software, layered on top of the Microsoft data center and best practices for AVS deployment. You really are getting all the bang without the buck. The fact that you can click deploy and be in a fantastic position. And we are seeing customers, as I said earlier, take advantage of the fact that AVS is in a known good state. It's repeatable automated deployments, meaning that when you land into AVS, it's configured via the platform. You're not having to jump through hoops to manually configure things server by server. And that puts you in a fantastic place, especially if you are an organization that are looking to either enhance your security posture or take advantage of some of the cloud native services sitting right next door. Having AVS bring all of that to the table the second you click the create button is incredibly powerful. So I think we really can't undersell that fact that it follows all of that best practices when it comes to the security modeling itself, and you get all of that as part of the service.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. When we talk about data center extension, visibility and control, we talk about HCX. HCX is an application mobility platform designed for simplifying application migration, rebalancing workloads, and optimizing disaster recovery across data centers and clouds. HCX maps source and destination sites, networks, storage, and compute to enable organizations to reliably migrate to the cloud. Over on the right side here, you can see some of HCX's capabilities, such as vSphere to vSphere migration, obviously from your on-prem to AVS, parallel VM migration here when your organization, if you wish to migrate, do bulk migration, such 100 VMs, HCX can support parallel migration. Replication assisted vMotion, especially for critical workloads when you want to have full control over the cutovers. If you're migrating a business critical application to AVS, HCX allows you and your organization to maintain full control of that business critical application. We all know that, we all, I guess, have that some of the legacy apps inside of our organizations that have hard coded IP. some of which we may know about, some we might not know about because we haven't done enough app inventory to know which ones have hard-coded in IPs into them. And what it means is when you're moving apps or workloads into AVS, is you were able to maintain that IP that you had on premises on AVS. So AVS allows you for a layer 2 stretch and to maintain that IP address, so no other services are impacted, especially the legacy apps that had hard-coded IPs in them. And also secure proxy, secure communications for vMotion and replication traffic. That means encrypted tunnels, secure tunnels from your on-premises data center to the Microsoft cloud. Any additions to this one, Scott, from your perspective?
I think this, to a degree, is the secret sauce. This is what's making customers, to a degree, take a step back and not think of it as just another data center, but as a full automated migration process. The fact that we're not having to open 1,000,001 firewall ports between two data centers, but instead can drop an appliance, open up a minimal set of ports, and be up and running in a matter of hours is incredibly exciting. One of the features you mentioned a little bit early on, replication-assisted vMotion, it's kind of taking the world by storm, especially when it comes to larger migrations. The fact you can pre-schedule replication ahead of time. So at the beginning of the week, you say, right, let's kick off replication, have that happen in the background. And then when you're ready, either manually or on a schedule, you can have those vMotions kick in and begin to cut over. Because we're separating the replication from the vMotion, all of a sudden your maintenance window, your vMotion window becomes shortened dramatically. We're seeing customers go from traditionally being able to move a couple of virtual machines a week to doing 100 a night, just because they can replicate ahead of time, make sure they're ready to go, and then vMotion when they're ready, doing that last second cutover. So incredibly powerful technology. But the best thing is, because it's included as part of AVS and it's built by VMware, it's the same parties delivering the entire service end to end. It means you're not having to involve third-party applications just to migrate workloads. It's a native part of the platform itself. Now, every single customer I talk to uses HCX with AVS. Yeah, as I say, it's the secret sauce to making your migrations as simple as possible. We've gone through and talked about vMotion, but things like version compatibility for vMotion takes the sting out of actually having to move from one place to another. The last thing you want to have to do is upgrade on-prem just to shift off it. The fact that we can go the whole way back to 6.0 by default or further by exception means that you can really take your environment as it is today, shift workloads across using vMotion without even shutting them down, and not have to invest time and effort into a site that, well, you'll soon be shifting things off of. So an incredibly powerful technology stack, and we really have just touched the tip of the iceberg today in terms of its functionality, what it can deliver. I mean, there's DR in there, there's a ton of other services that actually make up HCX itself. But as I said before, because it's part of the default AVS stack, you get all of this power available and ready to go from day one, leveraging VMware's best-in-class migration technology, which is HCX, when you're ready inside of AVS. Greg, did you have anything to add from a VMware side of things?
Well, I mean, from my standpoint, this is one of those golden nuggets that really comes with AVS, as I put it. And as you said, it is the secret sauce. I've seen many customer success stories around leveraging HCX for migration. You talk about, Chris, the ability not to have to re-IP. I mean, that's a huge benefit for a lot of our customers. And the other one is, around replicated assisted vMotion, the ability to live migrate. I mean, that's just insane that we're able to move out of one data center into Azure with zero downtime. So it's a very powerful tool. Yeah, as you said, Scott, it's the secret sauce.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on here is, and this is again one of my favorite slides. And as with any public cloud migration, and networking is a key component. So once you have migrated to AVS, this diagram will show you how your organization will connect to the AVS tenant in the cloud or other virtual networks in Azure. Scott, if you don't mind, I'll let you delve into each of the networking parts, the components here, and take it from there.
Definitely. So one of the nicest things about AVS is it just uses Microsoft's best practice networking technology internal to the solution. So whether we're talking about a customer's implementation or the low-level fundamentals of AVS, it's all just Azure networking, which is kind of nice. It means we don't have to learn a brand new technology stack just to talk about AVS itself. Now, behind the scenes, AVS leverages ExpressRoute, which means if your organization already has an ExpressRoute in place today, well, congratulations, you've already done 80% of the hard work of actually setting up AVS itself. If you don't have an ExpressRoute, well, AVS is a fantastic mechanism to drive that private connectivity into your organization. But for proof of concepts, we do also have the ability to look at using site-to-site VPNs. Jumping back to the diagram and kind of talking through it in a little bit of detail, we have three primary parts when we look at traffic. And one of the best things to note about these parts is they're as short as possible. This means it's the least number of hops, the lowest latency you can possibly get, no matter what we're talking to. The first path is what a lot of customers will have existing today or will be their first foray into private connectivity for Azure. So that's the connectivity from on-prem to an Azure virtual network via ExpressRoute. And that gives you private connectivity from your existing data center into an Azure virtual network, allowing you to provision infrastructure as a service or any other private services. The second path that you'll set up as part of an AVS deployment is the connectivity between your AVS private cloud or your AVS network and that Azure virtual network we talked about in step one. Now, this can be used for two main things. The first one is giving you connectivity from your Azure resources into AVS. So one thing to note here is vCenter and NSXT Manager are private by default. So we actually need to talk to them through an Azure virtual network when we're first setting up the private cloud. But as well as giving us connectivity from Azure into AVS, it also gives us connectivity from AVS back out to Azure. So you can begin to actually leverage all of those private native services as if they're sitting right next door to AVS. One thing to note though, AVS and an Azure virtual network are separate concepts. They're separate boxes here. What this means is we can actually leverage the best of each platform individually. You have the full power of NSXT inside of AVS, meaning you're not limited by what the Azure SDN can do. You can take advantage of all the functionality end to end, which is incredibly powerful. But you can then also route and talk across to your network sitting inside of an Azure virtual network. So you really do get the best of both worlds. All the power of NSXT and the power that SDN platform delivers, plus the power of Azure virtual networking sitting side by side. The last path, and this is probably the most important for long-term communications and migrations, is that path from on-prem to AVS. And we actually leverage a technology called Global Reach to provide this connectivity between your public ExpressRoute, which is how you're connecting to Azure, and the private ExpressRoute that lives inside of AVS itself. Now, we probably don't have enough time today to dig into the networking architecture of AVS at a deep level, but if you are interested in this, reach out, happy to work with MOQ and actually run through that AVS architecture. But the long and short of it is you get the lowest possible latency between on-prem and AVS, minimal number of hops, but more importantly, anything you advertise out from AVS will be advertised to on-prem, and anything you're advertising out from on-prem today will be learnt by AVS, giving you end-to-end routing in a matter of clicks. So this high-level diagram also marries to basically our best practice architecture of having that end-to-end connectivity set up as part of the solution itself. So we'll leave it there for today, but when it comes to networking, AVS is incredibly powerful and it sets forward a series of patterns that you can begin to follow. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about one data center in one region, talking to one Azure virtual network, or regions worldwide, replicating between each other, talking across to thousands of virtual networks. It's the same set of patterns, just used in slightly different ways. So we'll pause there for a moment and I'll hand back to you, Chris.
No problem. Thank you, Scott. That was really good. And to see that you have a range of connectivity options that are secure and private to maintain your organization connected. That's good. moving on here. So this is MOQ Digital's approach to adopting AVS to partnering with you as a client organization on the AVS on the AVS journey. We use a 6-stage approach to enable customers on their AVS journey, and the approach is a proven framework that's been used for years, where we have partnered with our customers to support them on achieving their business goals. The engagement starts with an environmental discovery and understanding the current environment status of your infrastructure. And as we move to the design and planning stages, we engage closely with your technical teams to plan the Azure environment according to your requirements. When you transition to the build and configure stage, we'll initiate the building of the foundational blocks that will support workloads at a later stage. And finally, during the deploy phase, we migrate workloads and produce documentation. With end-to-end visibility of the migration process, client organizations can plan their projects leveraging MOQ Digital and ensure quality results will be delivered. So I guess key takeaways here as we start sort of, I guess, to wrap up in a couple of slides. And Scott and Greg, I'll ask you to add to the takeaways once I'm done here. But leveraging existing investments in skills and tools. We can't, I guess Scott mentioned this before. We can't undersell this. Leveraging existing investment in skills and tools. It's so expensive to retrain. It's so time consuming to learn a new platform. It can cause your analysts, your admins can make mistakes if they're not trained in certain platforms. So this ensures the maintenance of continuity and familiarity with the environment. High performance cloud infrastructure. What you're going to be consuming is dedicated, isolated, bare metal hardware, not a multi-tenanted environment, not shared resources. These resources are built on Azure's elastic and scalable infrastructure, which again, as an Azure service, just going to that slider bar, you can dial up as needed and dial down as when you no longer need the infrastructure, the servers. It's integrated and secured with Azure. Again, as Scott mentioned, low latency, high bandwidth access to the Azure ecosystem, with Microsoft providing the single point of support. And this can't be understood enough. It's a single, I guess, just that one single channel when things go south or problems arise. Next one here is the commercial benefits, and I mentioned the compounded benefits before. Your extended support for Windows and SQL Server 2008 RT, the ability to bring in hybrid benefits, which allows you to bring your own Windows and SQL licenses, 30 to 50% off on AVS reserved instances when you commit to 1 or 3 years with the service. And there is potential Microsoft funding that can be obtained for engagements on professional services to help you migrate to AVS. So there's lots here in terms of advantages and benefits to your business with AVS. Greg, I'm curious on your key takeaways here. What additions do you have?
Look, you've got some great ones there. I guess for me is AVS accelerates the customer's journey to cloud, right? It eliminates the requirement to having to refactor, having to re-IP to get to cloud native. Actually, AVS is Azure native, so you are moving to a native service. The other one big for me is, and we sort of touched on earlier in the presentation, it was really around the migration strategy. So what we're finding is a lot of our joint customers are taking the migrate first approach. So migrate to modernize first. So they're migrating first. They realize the economic savings that they're realizing within Azure. And then they're using those savings to fund some more rapid application modernization. So absolutely, taking advantage of some of those PaaS services such as SQL. So, migrate first, modernize later. So that's probably another key takeaway. And I think, you've touched on the other benefits around reskilling, retooling, and obviously the compounded commercial benefits you get with AVS. Scott?
Excellent.
Yep, I want to echo those sentiments 110%. The fact that it is just an Azure service means we can treat it like an Azure service. You can open up the Azure portal and deploy the service in a matter of minutes and get started on your journey. So it is really, really powerful in terms of customers both looking to take their first steps into Azure itself, as well as customers looking to extend above and beyond what they're doing today. The fact that we can shift everything across with minimal to no downtime in a very, very simplified process. I mean, change nothing, that's a migration dream. Having that ability to move those workloads across is so fantastic. But for me, I want another key takeaway here to be unlocking the power of Azure. Moving workloads across, having them sitting inside an Azure data center is the beginning of your journey. All of a sudden, you've now unlocked an amazing ecosystem that surrounds your workloads. And we're seeing customers leverage AVS as the core pivotal technology to their cloud journey longer term. The ability to shift and move into Azure. It's into Azure, it's in a data center, but then leverage the rest of the ecosystem when they're ready, on their own schedule, when the technologies fit. So it is a lot more than just a traditional migration. AVS is really that gateway to cloud native and to cloud as a whole. And I'm really excited to be working with customers everywhere to migrate those workloads across, because from the learning so far, all of a sudden a conversation that would have taken years and years to go to native infrastructure becomes a week-long conversation of, oh yeah, it's just VMware. We know this. Let's go. So incredibly accelerated.
That's great. That's great. Both of your feedback. That's really good. Well, I've got one more question for each of you. Like, what are you? So and you both mentioned you've both been very heavily involved with clients. We've talked a lot about the service here. So what's been the feedback from the clients you've had involvement with? I'll start with you, Greg.
Extremely positive, I guess. What customers are loving about this is consistent infrastructure, consistent operations, right? So leveraging the same skill sets on premise into Azure. It's very familiar. That's a huge benefit. The other one is all of a sudden, a lot of the admins, guess what? They're getting their weekends back. There's no patching, there's no, maintenance. All of a sudden, these guys have got a life. That's another huge benefit that I hear from I guess around the ground. So they're probably the two big ones for me.
Excellent. Yourself, Scott?
Pretty much the same, to be honest, but I'm going to go above and beyond and also say speed. The ability to keep things the same means that we can accelerate at such a rapid rate. We've actually had to coin a new term of data center evacuation. We're moving workloads so quick that it's not a one virtual machine a week, slowly Miranda over into Azure. No, it's cool, let's move everything in an accelerated time frame. Let's get everything out. And for customers that have data centers that are end of life, that have servers that are still 2008 and are running at risk, having that evacuation style mentality of let's shift everything with minimal change as quickly as possible resonates so strongly with so many customers, but then being able to turn around, actually action, deliver, and migrate in a short time frame is what then, well, that's why we're seeing customers seeing the benefits of AVS.
Excellent. Thank you. That's great. Getting feedback from the field. That's always good. I guess last slide here for us is really about what, in terms of next steps. What do we do? So when you engage with us to support your organization on your AVS migration, we start with an assessment to identify workloads to be moved, which will allow us to size the AVS environment in Azure. Additionally, we proceed with a business case analysis, for example, a TCO of a current solution. And as you enter a 30-day free pilot of the environment, we will build a high-level design in parallel. And once the document is reviewed and approved, we'll provide you with a migration proposal. So to the migration proposal to AVS. And upon acceptance of that migration proposal, our teams will start building the Azure foundations to host your workloads in AVS. So that is pretty much it in terms of slides. I guess I'll open up to you, Scott, first for any final considerations before we open up for questions.
Yeah, perfect. So from my perspective, like working with so many customers across not only Australia, New Zealand, but Asia as a whole it's been amazing to see the journeys and the steps that customers are taking utilizing AVS, how AVS is empowering organizations to make migrations on their terms, keeping the same technology across the board, keeping the same operational model. We've harped on about it for all of today, but it's because it's true and it's something that we traditionally haven't been able to talk about when we talk about a cloud migration. So all of a sudden we've unlocked this brand new path to cloud, the ability to keep everything the same, and that to me is incredibly exciting. No matter the size of your organization, whether you've got 100 virtual machines or 100,000 virtual machines, let's have a conversation about AVS. I encourage everyone to reach out. Let's look at how we can actually leverage AVS to make your migration journey as simple as possible.
Absolutely. Great, Scott. And how about yourself, Greg? Final considerations?
Yeah, look, I think, we've spoken about the value of this solution and I guess the benefits. What I actually just want to touch on is actually the partnership with Microsoft. Now, as many of you know out there, we've had a colourful history of being competitors out in the field. But as I said earlier on the piece, but increasingly today, we are becoming true partnerships, and it's a partnership that keeps growing and growing. And as our sort of aspirations and Microsoft's aspirations about working together around the cloud journey for our joint customers is becoming more aligned. And this collaboration with AVS is, it's really taking this partnership and collaboration to the next level. So I'm really excited about the opportunity, really excited about working with Microsoft and our joint customers to really start delivering on their business objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, I look forward to work with all of our customers and helping them in their AVS journey.